Tyler Little, Mom's Basement. How's it going, bro?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for
Hey,
having me, Michael. Appreciate you.
no, it's always a great pleasure to get to speak with you. I know most of the time we usually get to talk over, just over messages, over voice chats, But now getting to kind of speak with you in terms of your realm, because I feel like you're someone that I feel like you got this prediction game kind of on lock, so to speak, and you've been someone that has really, really kind of taken a rise to that. Can you kind of explain, just for the fans that maybe don't have a knowledge of the Mom's Basement MMA platform and the channel, of everything you guys got going on over there, man? Because I feel like you guys are developing a killer program, and just it's been on the rise.
Well, Michael, I appreciate that first and foremost. And hi, everybody. Yeah, it's been a crazy year, man. Like, really, what I wanted to do, my vision for 2024 was really to try to figure out a way to encapsulate the UFC into what it is that I really love. And what I really love is regional MMA. Like, if you don't like regional MMA, you're not following me on Instagram. That's really ultimately what I'm about at the end of the day. So for the past several years, all I had been really doing was trying to get to know who are these regional prospects, who are these killers in A1, who are these guys in 559, LFA, etc. And then I started looking at it and I was just like, okay, but I'm kind of like neglecting the UFC. That's probably not a wise thing to do. So then I was just like, all right, well, I bet on a lot of these fights. I might as well just kind of talk through them. And the channel's really exploded. I'm really fortunate for that. We have close to 10,000 subs on YouTube, which is freaking wild. Never would have imagined that, but man, it's been a lot of fun, man. And then of course you were on the program not that long ago, and we freaking crushed that one too. So it's been a great year, man.
No, it's been absolutely. I mean, I would say it's been probably like. Would you say it's been the highlight of your year so far? Just kind of being able to really just get to see where the platform goes. Before we get into everything, man, because I like how I stated. If you guys have not been subscribed from the beginning to now watching Mom's Basement MMA channel, I just feel like it just. I can't speak enough to how well the production and everything has just been just doing so well over there, man.
Yeah, it's really just been kind of like learning, honestly, and then knowing like who you can find in this space who does things better than you. And my man Zach, 4 ounces to freedom, he is the freaking man. And honestly, I attribute a lot of the success to him because I like send him my stuff. I'm like, yo, like my thumbs aren't that great. Can you help me out? And he's the man at that stuff. He also edits stuff way better than me. So, I've kind of also learned that it's okay to like teach yourself, but like as soon as you recognize somebody doing things that you really like, either A, figure it out to replicate that or to learn from somebody like that, or B, like figure out a way where you can work with them. And that's what I've been doing with Zach, and we've been absolutely crushing it.
And that you have been killing it. And I know you already got to kind of dive into this card, but I really wanted to have you on because I know that you would have some of the expertise to guide me through some of these prelims that maybe a couple people would not know. I know a couple of these names, but definitely wanted to have you on because I know you're the man for all this type of stuff. Diving into this card, my man, I mean, let's just go ahead and take it straight from the bottom up because everybody already knows about the top. Everybody knows about that cream and about what's going on kind of for that main card. But and I was even kind of diving into it before you hopped on the call here. What do you see from these prelims that you're really, really excited for as a fight fan? And for fight fans at home that are possibly looking to possibly get more into the UFC and get more into the weeds of these cards, what are some things that you could possibly be looking for on Saturday?
Well, really, I think one of the first fights that kind of stand out to me right off the top is Renat Fakhretdinov going up against Carlos Leal. That's a killer fight, and it's almost criminal that it's on the prelims. Carlos Leal, he was tearing it up in PFL. He has knockout wins over the Postman Taylor. And I also remember his two losses. He lost twice against Saudi Bussi. If you watch the PFL, it's a guy you're already familiar with. A lot of knockout power, a lot of names he has on his resume. And I'm not sure exactly what the odds are now, but I want to say he's like in excess of plus 200. That's criminal. He should not be that big of a betting underdog going up against Renat Fakhretdinov. Fakhretdinov, he's an absolute G in his own right. He went up against Nicholas Dalby in his most recent contest. That was a split decision that he ended up winning. I thought he lost that fight. I
It's
thought
a
Nicholas
war.
Dalby. I thought Dalby won personally. This is
Yeah.
going to be a really close fight. I guess if I had to pick who I think is going to win, I think I'm going to go with the chalk. I think I'm going to pick Fakhretdinov. But listen, if you're a gambling man, plus 220, plus 240, whatever it is on Carlos Leal, I don't think that's really a terrible bet.
I full-heartedly agree with you on that one because I know Renat, he's had some big wins in the UFC. He's gotten the win over Brian Battle, which I mean now it's seasoned like fine wine, I guess you could say. And then obviously the win over Kevin Lee. I think that's always going to be a name that just strikes out to people, being a former title challenger and obviously having a lot of accolades in terms of the mixed martial arts scene. But Renat, he definitely had a lot of weak points in that Nicholas Dalby fight. And that's not to not compliment Nicholas Dalby as a fighter, but he's had a lot of points in his career, Dalby saying, where he's been inconsistent, and he's really been able to piece together some big fights as of late. And that Renat fight was, I just feel, another cornerstone on Nicholas Dalby's kind of resume, but also on Renat. I mean, that could also be a win that ages, like how you were saying, pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Renat Fakhretdinov, I mean, he's a fun fighter to watch. I like what it is that he's been doing thus far. Like I said, I thought the Dalby fight was absolutely killer. I hope the bout order on Tapology is wrong. I hope this isn't the early prelim opener. Hopefully, this fight gets pushed up further along on the card. I think it's a really exciting matchup. And then another one that I'm looking at that I think is also kind of fun is if you scroll up a little bit, Michael, it's the Abus fight. I think that's on the prelims as well. That's going to be another.
Yeah, it's a prelim fight.
That's another really exciting fight that I'm looking at. Abus Magomedov going up against Bruno Fajeda. Fajeda fought Dustin Stoltzfus in his last fight, and that fight was a lot closer than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. I remember Dustin Stoltzfus had him in a knee bar, is what it looked like initially, and it looked really close. I think of Dustin Stoltzfus, he's a guy that can get cracked, but if he gets in a grappling exchange with you and he gets this fight down to the canvas, he's a live dog with the submissions. A lot of people don't know that about Dustin Stoltzfus, and I was wondering if he was going to be able to figure out a way to get Fajeda out of there with a knee bar or a sub of something like that. It didn't end up happening. Hats off to Fajeda. He ends up absolutely cracking him with a slick elbow knockout. That was awesome. And then he's going up against Abus Magomedov. Consistency has been kind of the issue with this guy. He's looked good at times, but then he's also put up some stinker performances as well. Do you like
Sean Strickland fight? That was really rough. That's really
exactly
rough on
the Cal Bahalio fight? That was another one that probably didn't age all that. I know he lost that fight, but it was kind of like a boring stinker of a fight. He has the potential. He's shown flashes. He just really needs to be more consistent. He needs to put it all together. I'm really curious to see how he's going to look like going up against a guy that has found a way to plow through everybody and get these early knockouts. But both of these guys are gassers. Both of these guys, their cardio isn't that great. Bruno Fajeda has never been the distance in an MMA fight before. And then we know for a fact, Abus Magomedov, he definitely loses steam as these fights go on. I think it's really a matter of who can manage their gas tank better. I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think it's a really compelling fight in the middleweight division.
Let's just talk about that middleweight division because I feel like for a couple of years back, I mean, let's just look. Izzy Asani was when he was champ. Everybody was writing off this middleweight division. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. There's like we need prospects, this and that. Now, I mean, flash forward a couple of years, and we're talking about guys like Abus Magomedov. I don't even think Abus is in all retrospect like a super amazing prospect. But this was a guy that was getting main events a couple of years ago against Sean Strickland, and now he's on the prelims. It just goes to show you how wrong some of those statements and some of those kind of things were stated in terms of the middleweight division. Because when I was hearing that, I was like, how can you say the middleweight division is like lackluster when a lot of these guys haven't even really had those big fights yet to even show what they got? You know what I'm saying? And I feel like it's been shown in the pudding these past 2 years.
I think you're going to see a lot of movement in the 185-pound weight class in 2025. We have these young killers like Fluffy. He just got a freaking amazing performance last week against Michel Pereira, who's another really good fighter, even though he ended up losing. And we're seeing also like guys that have like had it for a really long time and either haven't delivered on the goods or just getting older. Jack Hermansson's a really good example of that. Marvin Vettori, I know he's a young guy still, but not the most consistent fighter. Jared Cannonier's another guy who had been fighting at the peak for a very long time, and now we see back-to-back disappointing performances from him. I can't help but think they're going to really start pushing these Joe Pifers. They're really going to start pushing guys like Bo Nickel up these ranks, and I think you're going to see a very different top 15 here in another 6 months or so.
I think I could definitely see that very much coming in. I think what are your thoughts about the possibility of I heard Fluffy was calling out for that DDP matchup. I think that's kind of a matchup that like hardcore fight fans at 185. I know we're breaking away a little bit from that 308 card, but man, like I just can't stop thinking about that fight because I think that's fireworks if they're able to put that together in South Africa, maybe if the time, because I know that Dana's been complaining that he hasn't been able to get the venue quite set. So I mean that gives him some time though. I mean, with especially like how you're stating, get Fluffy on a little bit of a run, get some of these guys on a big run here.
I think the challenge with that is Fluffy's at the bottom end of the middleweight rankings right now. Now, the rankings are just a benchmark. At the end of the day, the UFC can put together any fight that they really want, but I think he just needs a little bit more time. I think they really need to build him up correctly. I don't think I'd give him a title fight anytime soon. I think really what I would like to see is I'd like to see him go up against somebody like a Jack Hermanson. I would like to see him fight somebody like Marvin Vettori or Jared Cannonier. I think those are all great fights for him. And spoiler alert, I think he wins all those fights too. I think he's a phenomenal prospect. I'm really excited about this guy. I'm really excited to see what it is that he can do. I believe he is going to be in that top 5. Give it another year or so.
That's exactly what I was kind of going along that same road. I don't think he'll get that title shot just right away either. I think he'll definitely make a couple of, like how you're stating, maybe some bigger performances, maybe over the likes of a Jared Cannonier, or possibly I've seen some people stating Kyle Barajo, but I know that Kyle Barajo is being discussed for the Australia card, so a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of things up in the air with all that. But another big card that I'm another big fight on this prelim that I think a lot of people, and especially UFC fans that have been watching for quite some time, that are definitely going to have circled. RDA, Jeff Neal going at it, 170 pounds. RDA is kind of officially making his like mainstay here at 170. I think this is a really tough fight for people to bet on, especially consider Jeff Neal's last couple of performances. He's had the Ian Gary loss, he's had the Shavkat Rakhmonov war, and then RDA is kind of, he's been getting wins, but silently. So what are your thoughts behind this matchup? I think it's very interesting.
It is very interesting. And now we see RDA going back up to 170 pounds. And it just kind of makes you wonder. Anytime I think of Rafael Dos Anjos, I think of like, man, it's a shame that there isn't anything in the 160 range, right? Because like he's that in-betweener guy that's fought at lightweight for a long time. And now
that Kevin
he's
Lee fit.
yeah, and now he's like back at the welterweight division. So it's really just a matter of like who can be the more consistent guy, because it's been a minute since Jeff Neal's really done anything of consequence. And hate to say it, but Rafael Dos Anjos, kind of the same deal with him. The last time RDA won a fight, he got a submission victory over Brian Barberena. I think it was in the second round. That was going on a couple years back. And then for Jeff Neal, off the top of my head, who did he last beat? I know he went up against Ian Gary, and that was a split decision. I thought it was a fight that he ended up losing. The last time he won a fight, you have to go back to August of 2022 when he knocked out Vicente Luque. And unfortunately for him, that's just a fight that isn't going to be aging well. Luque just looks like a complete shell of himself. I think Jeff Neal, if we're going to give him some slack, it's okay. You got choked out by Shavkat. Not a big deal. He's going to be fighting for the title here pretty soon. And then he drops a split decision against Ian Machado Gary. Now, I thought Ian Gary won, to be fair. That's my opinion. There are some people out there that might think differently because, you look at it, I can understand an argument in which you might be inclined to give it to Jeff Neal. I think Zach actually thought Jeff Neal won, and I was like, you're on crack. But in any event, that's it's all good. The point I'm trying to make here is he's gone up against elite competition. This should be a fight that he should be able to win, in my opinion. I think it is going to be close, though. I don't think anyone's running away with this fight. I predict a 29-28 for Jeff Neal in this fight.
I think I'm actually very much on the train that you are, because Jeff Neal, I know that he's had, like how you stated, you can write these kind of decisions. You can be like, okay, well, he had the Ian Gary fight, and Ian Gary's a rising prospect, and Shavkat's right. But at the end of the day, the UFC doesn't really look at who's on the rise and who you're fighting. It's more of, you've dropped 3 or 4 in this last couple fights, unless your name's Tony Ferguson, or unless you're one of those big name guys that's really made us money in the past. We don't know if they're going to be sticking around too long. So this possibly could be a really, really large fight for Jeff Neal, and moving forward, especially at that 170 division. But then, what do you kind of make of the whole Shara Bullet being on this main card over guys like, possibly, like, I'm even looking at this prelim, like, I think Mukhtabek Orabai in that Mateus matchup could possibly take that spot over there on the main card. I don't see where the UFC is getting the marketing for this guy in terms of Bullet and Magomedov. I know he has the look, but I don't know. Would you disagree with me on that, or where do you lie on the whole Bullet train?
It's very interesting because I look at him and I obviously see a gifted Muay Thai fighter. And the one thing I will give the UFC credit for is they know their market and they know the matchups very well. They're not putting him up against somebody who's going to be testing him in the grappling. If you notice all of his matchups, who's he going up against? Strikers predominantly. Now, I will say in this particular matchup, he's going up against an incredibly gifted striker in Armin Petrosian. Armin Petrosian, his weak spot, coincidentally, is grappling. I don't think he's got to worry about that against Shar Magomedov. And in fact, I like him as a dog in this fight against Shar Magomedov. Armin Petrosian, last time I looked, he was around plus 150, plus 160. Look at his body of work. Look who he's beat in the past. He has a split decision victory over RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez. That's a very, very impressive victory. He also has a victory over Christian Leroy Duncan, who's another insane striker. Don't sleep on Armin Petrosian. He doesn't have to worry about getting taken down either. It's a very, very interesting matchup between two very gifted strikers. The one thing that kind of surprises, or I shouldn't say surprise, but the one thing that would concern me if you're a betting guy, this fight's in the Middle East, the crowd's going to be behind Magomedov. How are the judges going to react to that? This could very much be a very close fight. It could go to a split decision even, and you kind of have to think like, okay, well, conventional wisdom would say that would favor somebody like Shara Bullet, right? But I like Armin Petrosian in this spot. A great striker. Don't sleep on his striking. Guys take down Armin Petrosian because they're afraid of his striking. If that's the way to beat him, go for takedowns, choke him out. I don't see Shara Bullet doing that in this fight.
I think honestly this is I think you had mentioned it too in that video, like one of the sleeper picks on the card, because like I feel like a lot of people are just Bullet, and you even see the UFC just pushing him so hard, but it's like guys like Armin, like you see their like body of work and you see the guys that they fought like previously, and then you look at the guys that Sharad's fought, and I mean even in his last fight I know he was able to notch the finish in the third round, but that was coming off of a guy that was sitting on the couch. That I mean Mackenzie Dern's husband, he was looking to get into fights with Bobby Green like a couple of months ago, like it's just I don't know if he's really ready for that quite level up in competition. And I know we're speaking about Armin Petrosian in terms of like, oh, like maybe not, but he's still a very high level striker, like how you mentioned, a very, very dangerous matchup, especially for a lot of guys that are looking to peek into that 185-pound division that we were just stating so highly about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be really interesting to see just kind of like how these two game plan for each other, because Shara Bullet, I think he's meeting his match in terms of a very technical striker, somebody who's going to be able to go up to with him toe to toe and let it rip. It's going to be an exciting fight. In fact, even a finish wouldn't really surprise me here. I have to actually go in the full 15 minutes, but that is definitely a interesting fight. In my opinion, though, Michael, I think you hit the nail on the head, though. You look at some of the earlier fights, I'm of the opinion that Renat should probably be opening up the main card. That's this right here, this fight that we're talking about. I think that's the featured prelim.
I think I could definitely agree with that. And then maybe even I would see like the fact that Jeff Neal and RDA is leading off that prelim over there is just, it's kind of crazy to me. And like how you were stating, like there's just so many fights on this card where it's like you could argue, oh yeah, throwing them here, throwing them there, but it's just this main card is just absolutely stacked from top to bottom. It's 4 fights, probably one of the better, I would say, feature to main events that we have seen in quite some time. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're looking at what's going to go down as one of the best pay-per-views of 2024. This pay-per-view offering is, dare I say, worth actual money. So can't say that.
I actually may be buying this.
But yeah, I mean, it's probably worth the price tag. Enjoy it while you can. And then especially for you guys over on the West Coast, you'll be able to eat your omelets and, drink your beers at noon and watch a great afternoon of fights.
Hey, it depends on where you are over here. You may be smoking up a bleezy that early up in the morning. So, just depends on where you're at. Not everyone, the old California sober saying. But as we look to go into this main card, the only fight that I could really see being a snoozer on here, and I mean, disagree with me completely if you disagree, but it's the Lerone Murphy and Dan Ige fight, which I think on paper a lot of people are going to look at, especially Igue's last fight taking on Diego Lopez, 3 days notice. I mean, UFC's obviously been looking to put a little bit more into Mr. 50K Ige after that, but I just think that with Lerone Murphy's style, it's almost like somebody made a comment the other day. Honestly, like, it just clicked, and I was like, wow, that's what he reminded me of. It reminds me so much of a young Leon Edwards. Like, I know everyone's gonna say that with the angling, but just so like clicked on, even in terms of the way that he is able to, when he does get those like close to finishing sequences or has really good series like the Edson Barboza fight, he looked so much similar to like a smaller Leon.
You know what? It's funny that you say that, because when I think of a guy like Lerone Murphy, I think of like a ham sandwich, right? It's not flashy, but it's good. Have you ever had a bad ham sandwich? I haven't. I love
Nope.
ham sandwiches.
You can
Right?
throw mustard on that thing. You can do all kinds of things with a ham sandwich, man.
And that to me is Lerone Murphy personified. Like, he's not flashy. He's never going to be like this big, huge superstar that the UK desperately wants. Like, they want all their guys to do well. They want all these superstars because, let's face it, outside of Aspinall, outside of Edwards, outside of Paddy the Baddy, it's kind of limited. They want to see their guys do well. He's obviously a very flashy guy. He's very technically sound. You look at him, look at what he did. He beat the brakes off of Edson Barboza. But to your point, this is a guy that can slow down the pace of a fight. He's very calculated. He's very technical. Is he the flashiest guy? Probably not. Is he the most exciting guy? Is he going to be a UFC superstar? Again, the answer is no to probably all those things, but he's smart. He's very calculated. I definitely respect him. I'll go as far as to say, my love for Dan Ige aside, I got to go with Lerone Murphy in this fight. I think this is a great matchup for him. They want to push him. They want to see what it is that he could do. Obviously, with Dan Ige, we have a guy that's on the tail end of the rankings here. It's a great opportunity for Lerone Murphy to ascend in the rankings a little bit and see what it is that he can do. I say ascend to the rankings because I'm pretty sure Dan Ige, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Ige is actually ranked below him. But I think if he can get the job done over Dan Ige, he should be able to get a much bigger fight at featherweight. We'll see what they have in store for him, but I think this is going to be a fight that he'll, as long as he's smart, he should be able to take care of Dan Ige. Dan Ige, though, we know what it is that he can do. This guy can put anybody's lights out. He could be losing 14 minutes of a fight. He only needs one opportunity, one shot, and you're sleeping on the canvas. Lerone Murphy better watch out for that. I think he'll be okay, though. Dan Ige is an absolute legend. He's an absolute beast. I think Lerone Murphy should be able to handle him, though.
Always game and always ready to go at it is Dan Ige, man. Like, I feel like every single time I've ever put on the TV, and like Dan Ige just got that, like, he's almost like got the look of a Lerone Murphy in terms of like, he's not a flashy guy. He's not doing all this to kind of glitz and glam, but man, when he goes to that cage and those doors are shut and the timer starts going down, like how you said, all it takes is one punch from that man, and we'll be seeing the judges' scorecards being read off at the end of the night, man, because he is an absolute tank at 145. But what are your thoughts looking at this light heavyweight matchup? I mean, Alexander Rakic, Magomed Ankalaev, possibly would you say this is like a title eliminator? I know UFC hasn't really mentioned that, but I feel like at light heavyweight, what else does Alex Pereira really have left? Except for taking down and beating, not taking down literally, but taking down the quote-unquote Russian, the Russian beast that is standing in his way, the Rocky Four. I think that would actually be his fourth title defense as well. Ankalaev, man, if he's able to get this win, I think possibly we'll be seeing that main event, or what you think? Where are you thinking?
It's interesting. I definitely agree with you in the sense that, is it a title eliminator for Magomed Ankalaev? Most certainly. Can I say that about Alexander Rakic? I'm not sure, because he's been away for a long time and he's on a 2-fight skid at the moment. It's kind of, I feel bad for Magomed Ankalaev, really, because this is a shitty fight for him to have to take. It's all risk and real no reward, because if he gets the job done against Alexander Rakic, which I think he will, but if he gets the job done, like, how has his position improved? He should already be the number one title contender, in my opinion. He should have got that opportunity over Khalil Roundtree. He never did. And really, this is just an opportunity for him to collect a paycheck. You kind of feel bad for him. This is a guy that I think, I'm not sure what it is. I don't know the details. I don't know if there's a visa issue, if the timing never worked out, or maybe he got hurt. Who knows? That, as well as I do, Michael, like, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, and it's easy to speculate. It's easy to say that the UFC's given somebody the shaft, but I don't know. I don't know if this guy had visa issues. I don't know what's going on with his injury history or whatever the case may be. But, it just makes you wonder, right? Because we just had that Roundtree fight happen a couple weeks back, and now we have this fight. It's like, wait, we couldn't have figured this out. We couldn't have figured out the logistics for this. Like, we couldn't have figured out a way to make these two meet in the card. Now, I'm not saying this fight should necessarily happen. I don't think Pereira should have to go out to the Middle East to fight Magomed Ankalaev, but it's like, you guys couldn't have put that on the John Jones card in December in New York. Like, we got to figure this out. But in any event, yeah, he is the heir apparent in terms of who should be next. I think he will take care of business against Alexander Rakic. The one thing about Rakic, he is a beast. I'm a fan of him. He's a
danger on the feet. Dangerous on the feet.
He is. He absolutely is. But so is Magomed Ankalaev. Like, I did not have him starching Johnny Walker on my bingo card. I thought he was going to go for a takedown and choke him out and maybe get a ground and pound finish. We know Johnny Walker. We know that he has some grappling deficiencies. Takedown defense ain't the best. We saw Magomed Ankalaev just knock him into a new orbit. He looked absolutely fantastic in that matchup. I actually think he's going to get a finish here against Alexander Rakic. I think this fight's going to make its way down to the canvas, and I like Magomed Ankalaev to get a ground and pound finish in the third round.
And everybody always seems to complain, and I think it's kind of going to be my closing note on Ankalaev, just so we can go ahead and hop into this co-main event and main event here. But everyone always complains about Ankalaev being boring. But let me just tell you, the only boring, quote-unquote boring fight I've ever really watched from this man was his fight with Jan Blachowicz, which is probably, now looking back in retrospect, one of the better light heavyweights that we have seen in the past 5 or 6 years. I mean, even going to look through John Jones's light heavyweight title resumes, I would put Jan Blachowicz over Vincent St. Preux. I love Dom Reyes, but I'm putting him over a Dom Reyes. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's absolutely sinister and crazy that we're talking in 2024 and Magomed Ankalaev, and we're in quarter 4 of 2024, and Magomed Ankalaev still hasn't got a title shot. It's crazy to me, and the fact that people are saying, oh, boring, oh, this, all that. I've only watched one boring fight from this guy, and I would probably say it was one of the most competitive fights that we've seen in terms of scoring, and actually deserving of a draw in some sort of senses.
Apples to oranges comparison, I'll admit, but Raquel Pennington got a title shot, so that's all I'm saying.
That's all we got. That's all we got to say in terms of that.
We're gonna call Magomed Ankalaev boring. Raquel Pennington got a title shot, so.
If we're gonna be going down that route, UFC, I think Ankalaev deserves it next, my man.
There we go.
And then this is the same exact logic. If you're gonna go ahead and look at this co-main event, everybody pushing Khamzat Chimaev, possibly looking to go and have that 185 title shot if he's able to get a big win against Robert Whittaker, which I don't even know if I really feel the best about kind of shooting Chimaev up so fast, especially after kind of what some would call, I know he had the 10-8 against Usman in the first, which was impressive. Don't get me wrong, love Usman, love that fact that he was able to pick that up on such short notice, but it's still Usman going up from 170 to 185, and Usman definitely tired him out in the second or third round. I'm very excited to see what Robert Whittaker does in terms of improving the game, because I think Khamzat's going to kind of take some pages out of the DDP playbook and possibly look to go ahead and go attack the grappling over here against Whittaker. I really think Whittaker's going to have a tough time in this matchup. I think Chimaev gets it done, but I wanted to hear your breakdowns on it, because I'm hearing all kinds of sorts of predictions going out there in the world right now in terms of this matchup.
It's really interesting because, like, you look at the betting odds and you see a crazy number like plus 250 by Robert Whittaker's name, and it gives you like a reason to pause, right? And I think the reason why I look at this matchup, it's a test. It's a test for Khamzat Chimaev on two fronts. Number one, how are you going to fare against an elite middleweight prospect? That's the obvious with Robert Whittaker sharing the cage with him. Number two, the UFC asked that this fight be 5 rounds. Robert Whittaker did not ask for that. There was an article that was published earlier today, and Robert Whittaker was like, I prefer a 3-round fight, actually, because I don't get paid more for that. I would have preferred a 3-rounder. Well, for me, as the analyst, I look at this, and I'm thinking to myself, like, that should benefit you, my man. If you get out of the first 2 rounds, you have 3 more rounds to play with. That to me would be your best path to victory. Take him into the deep waters, just like our guy Fluffy did last week. Drown him in round 4 or 5 and get an exhaustion knockout or get a submission, something to that extent. The one thing I want to see about Hamzat Chimaev is he going to be able to ragdoll somebody like Robert Whitaker, a guy who is known for having very good takedown defense and for being a good grappler in his own right. Hamzat Chimaev went up against Usman. Usman, one of the like best welterweights, but not a middleweight. And we saw that after that first round, it was a completely different fight. In fact, I would go as far as to say I thought it was a draw. I thought I had a 10-8 in the first round for Hamzat, and then I had Usman winning rounds 2 and 3. I had that fight a draw. I would even go as far as to say I wouldn't really argue with you too much if you said you thought Usman won that fight. So just food for thought here. I think this is going to be a fight where if Hamzat Chimaev is going to get it done, he's going to need to get a finish in rounds 1 or 2. It's not the most outlandish prediction. I can understand why. I mean, the odds are in your favor. I mean, I guess because that's the chalk pick, right? That's the guy that everyone thinks is going to win. But I'm going the other way, man. I'm going to take Robert Whitaker. I think Robert Whitaker is going to be able to take this fight into the deep waters and figure out a way to win. Now, again, this fight's in the Middle East, and there's a risk element to that because you go to decision in the Middle East. The crowd is going to react to everything that Hamzat Chimaev does. Probably not going to be a lot of reactions to anything that Robert Whitaker does. That's something that's baked in the back of my mind. But if you look at the fight, you're getting plus 250. So you know what? I'm okay rolling the dice on Robert Whitaker to get this one done by decision. I'm looking at it more and more, and it's like, Hamzat Chimaev is a tough dude. I'm sure everyone's already like bashing his cardio. We all shit on DDP a few months back, saying like, oh, this guy, he's gonna look like shit in a 5-round fight, and he went 5 rounds, and he didn't look that bad. He looked pretty good. We'll see. I bet you Hamzat Chimaev's cardio is a lot better now. I bet a lot of people are probably exaggerating his cardio issues because we have to remember nobody stays static. Everyone's improving behind the scenes, or they're getting worse behind the scenes. I have to believe with the extended layoff that Hamzat Chimaev has made the most of that opportunity. I would imagine his health is in a much better place. I'm also going to guess his cardio is in a much better place, but I still think Robert Whitaker has enough tools in his toolbox to get a victory. I'll say it even goes a split decision, but I'm going to give it to Robert Whitaker. Something tells me that he's going to figure out a way to edge out Hamzat Chimaev.
I definitely wouldn't be mad at that one, man. I would be pretty happy if my boy, the Reaper, was able to go ahead and get that victory. I think a lot of UFC fans would, even if they are fans of Chimaev. It just would be one of those kind of feel-good wins of the year, especially after losing the fight to DDP and then, being able to get that win against Iskram, kind of on a little bit of a feed-em fight. The UFC threw him Ikram, and everyone was like, oh, why is this matchup even being made? Whitaker passed that test with flying colors, like how many believed he thought he would. I believe you said he also was going to pass that test with flying colors. So possibly looking to be 2 for 2 on your predictions this year with Robert Whitaker. I definitely wouldn't mind that prediction if it were to come into fruition. We got the main event here, though. Topuria Holloway. I mean, my heart says Holloway, but man, this young kid from Spain, he's just got something about him, man. And I personally was in the building for that UFC 298, and I cannot tell you enough. I know everyone uses this word so lightly nowadays, but I truly think in terms of aura and the way that he was able to talk and walk the walk, he is probably one of the closest prospects that we have seen to McGregor in quite some time. I think a lot of people have had their guys that they, and I know everyone hates the McGregor comparison and whatever, but at the end of the day, that has been our cash cow in the sport. And I think that Topuria is possibly, I know it's going to be hard to match a guy like McGregor. I don't think we'll ever meet another guy like that. But man, the way that he is able to pull together and just bring the hype in, and not only that, but encapsulate an arena. Because let me tell you, as soon as he walked out at UFC 298, I almost felt the building flip. Everybody was going for Volkanovski in that lead up, and then a just sudden split just happened. And I don't know. It's just, I'm feeling this kind of in the lead up to this one. I'm hoping that it doesn't go that way. I think Max Holloway, even fundamentals to be able to break down a guy like Topuria. But I want to hear your thoughts, especially with now you having your own prediction show and you obviously watching a ton of both these guys' fights going into it.
The first thing I would say about Ilya Topuria is like this isn't even the best version of him yet. He's only 27 years old. You're talking about a guy who's accomplished so much. He has an undefeated record, and he beat arguably one of the best featherweight contenders in the modern UFC era in Alexander Volkanovski. He's only 27 years old, And the fact that he was able to get a knockout the way in which he did, I thought that was very, very impressive. I can't say enough good things about Ilya Taporia. This guy, like he's made me into a believer. He had some shaky starts. I remember earlier on in his career, he looked very human. I remember there was that fight against Jai Herbert where I thought Jai Herbert was going to get him out of there at
That
one
head
point.
kick, man. I was like, whoa, what's happening right now? Like I was watching that too at home and just what the fuck is happening? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I remember that. Like Jai Herbert almost took him out, but then he follows that up by beating Bryce Mitchell at his own game, getting him out of there with an arm triangle. Very, very impressive. He ends up going the distance with Josh Emmett, who is a guy that maybe I was ready to like write off prematurely. I looked at him like, Emmett ain't the same dude, but he's a tough guy on any given day, and he was able to go the distance with Josh Emmett. I think of Josh Emmett, I think of like American style wrestling, and with some of these European guys that are taking some of these fights, they haven't experienced some of that before. You're always kind of curious to see, like, in terms of a MMA fight, what is that going to look like?
yeah.
He passed a huge test there, and then he follows that up at UFC 298, and he sparks Alexander Volkanovski in the second round. I mean, how can you not be impressed with this guy? All that stuff being said, I mean, you're talking about a challenger, Max Holloway, who you want to talk about a guy who's like talk the talk and walk the walk. It's definitely Max Holloway. And I'm looking at this and it's like, it's easy to get lost in the sauce, right? Because we dive into the analytics, we look into the past, but there's just something that tells me in this fight that Max Holloway is going to pull it off. I looked at this fight and I was like, my brain tells me Ilya Taporia is like the guy you should pick, right? It's like, okay, like Ilya
The
Taporia,
young prospect,
like
he's blazing guy going through the division. Yeah, I agree with you.
The young like murderer, right? It's like you look at this guy and it's like based off of what happened with Volkanovski, how can you not be impressed? But then there's another part of me that was like, okay, well, make a case, Tyler, for Max Holloway. How would you do that? And I sat down, and I thought about it, and I was just like, okay. And I'm not trying to take anything away. I think I've been very complimentary of Ilya. The reality, though, did Volk come back too soon? That is permeating in my brain. I look at that and I'm like, Volk, I've seen that guy eat shots before. And that to me is a shot that had he taken 6 to 9, 12 months off, could he have like lasted? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but I just can't help but think about that. I can't help but think like, did Volk come back too soon? And did that lead to the result that we got? Maybe, maybe not. It's all conjecture. We'll never know. To be fair, now, even if Alexander Volkanovski's out for like, an ample amount of time, he's not beating Ilya Taporia. I don't see that happening. But
I think it's a very hard matchup for him either way. Like, and going into it, it's just a very tough matchup in terms of size. And I think, honestly, I think, and this is not to interrupt, but like Taporia mentioned, Volkanovski, I went in there, I did in 5 minutes what you couldn't do in 70. But the Holloway match, and they always say style makes fights. I think like the Volkanovski and Holloway is like the perfect representation of that, because you have the lengthy striker, the guy he's very well known for his diversity in terms of mixed martial arts, but some guys just have your number at the end of the day. We have seen that so many times in mixed martial arts. And I think just Volk had Holloway's number. And Taporia has Volk's number, and sometimes that's what makes divisions so great, and I feel like that's what we're seeing now on full display, possibly looking on Saturday.
The one thing that I would want to put out there for the record, though, is this: going into UFC 300, what were we hearing? We were hearing going up to 155 pounds, going up against a guy that hits like a freaking truck in Justin Gaethje, and what happened? Max Holloway put on a striking clinic, made Justin Gaethje look like an amateur, and he puts him out of there. He points down to the ground and said, like, I'll give you a chance. I'll give you a chance, Justin. Like, let's just trade. And then he sparks him at the very end of the fight. One of the most legendary fights I've ever seen. The point I'm trying to make here is everyone's talking about Ilya's power, but how come nobody's talking about Max Holloway? I know it's not something we see all the time. I know he's a guy that goes to decision oftentimes, but I thought he showed in that fight that, hey man, like, don't sleep on this guy's power either. Like, he can hit you, he can hurt you. He took out Jose Aldo by ground and pound finish. He took out Anthony Pettis by finish. He took out Gaethje just recently, and then Korean Zombie too. So the point I'm trying to make here is like he may not necessarily be like known to the extent for his knockout power as Ilya Taporia is, but you know, I wouldn't discount him. I think that he can get. I think he can shock the world. I think Max Holloway is going to shock the world and figure out a way to capture his title. I really think that. And it's like, would that be if Max Holloway wins this fight? Is it the most shocking outcome? Like, because we look at it and it's like, I just said it. It's like, holy shit, Max Holloway like won, right? But is it really all that surprising when you think about it? Like, look at what he's done. Look at who he's beat. He's been at the top of the pile for a very, very long time. I can't help but think that he's going to figure out a way to get Ilya down to the ground. Or I'm sorry, I want to say that Ilya is going to try to get this fight down to the ground. He's going to feel Max's power. I think there's going to be some exchanges. I think they're both going to hurt each other. But at some point over the course of this fight, I'm predicting that Ilya is going to want to try to engage in the grappling. And I don't think he's going to be able to. Max Holloway, very, very good takedown defense. I think he's going to manage to keep this fight on the feet. Should be a really exciting one. I'm really curious to see what will happen.
I'm really excited to see what goes down. UFC 308 over there, Abu Dhabi, and I know you're going to be cracking open a cold one right as soon as the fights start over there, man. I know you won't be able to go ahead and enjoy some of the Cali's greens, but you'll be able to enjoy some of the DMV and the East Coast finest beverages, right?
Yes, sir. You got that right. I will be enjoying the fights, and I appreciate having the opportunity to come and chat with you and your audience about UFC 308. I'm looking forward to it, man.
It's been an absolute pleasure to get to have you on the program, Tyler. I mean, whether it be through our voice messages and the various impressions we can go ahead and pull off that will never be released to the public, never, no matter how much money you guys give me, I promise I will never do an impression on live. And me and Tyler, man, it's always great pleasure getting to speak to you, my brother. Thank you so much for joining the program and breaking that down with me today, my man.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, my brother. Tyler Little over there out of Mom's Basement MMA. Always a great pleasure getting to speak to my guy over there.